and you are listening to a brand new podcast brought to you by Flash Unda in conjunction with our good friends at emeraldtv.com and Chad Ray, our producer for this podcast. We are focusing on it's sort of the post-rollout, if you will, of marijuana, medicinal marijuana. What have been the multiple impacts? What is the struggle in terms of how this magic plant will be utilized and who will control? So we're here. It's devoted to that. It's 420 podcast in, again, collaboration with Chad Ray and emeraldtv.com. My co-host is Miguel Garland Molina and Sarah Schrader, Chair of Sonoma County ASA. Welcome, everybody. Sarah, why don't you tell us who our next guests are?
Well, I think the people that have been most impacted by this regulation over the last few years are cultivators. There have been so many artesian cultivators in Northern California that have provided me and so many other patients quality medicine that have not been able to get through this permitting process, or have seen a lot of hurdles related to enforcement or violations as they are trying to get through this regulation process. So I thought it was really important that we hear from those cultivators themselves. We have one gentleman here from Mendocino and another one that's here with us from Santa Cruz. And I want to thank you both for making the trek here to Santa Rosa. And I wanted to share a little bit about what has been going on related to licensing in your own communities. Bill, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your experience in Santa Cruz?
Sure. So this transition has been really difficult for the entire community. And I understand that we're in need for some sort of regulation. People want to be able to have a say in what development is. But a lot of the policy that's being implemented is strictly designed from a place of what I feel to be fear-mongering and unfounded fears. And not that there aren't bad actors out there, but could you imagine if every aspect of our society was based on strictly what bad actors are, without a focus on enabling the good actors, those that are trying? And policies that have been implemented in the county are really confusing because they make for what feels to be, to me, is a lot of great doublespeak. You know, we live in a county that at one point passed regulations basically banned it outright, or moratorium status, just kind of no man's land, where we live in a marketplace where it's not no man's land anymore, it's the man's land and it's controlled. And there are regulations in place. But regulations have to address the needs of the people. And I think what's really happened is that an entire class and group of people have just been disenfranchised because there's the illusion that we live in a legal paradigm, that everything's fine and dandy. Then why are militarized sheriffs running around doing court enforcement and abatement on gardens that are less than 500 square feet? We live in a county where the guidelines have stated that 5 patients and 100 square feet is tolerable. I know gardens that have 280, 250 square feet, and from cultivators that have been trying to navigate the maze. And I can't speak for everybody who's been hit, because I don't know everybody who's been hit. But I know a number of them. And the common thread is that they all started the application process, been through varying points throughout the last couple of years, as we've known that the Prop 64 was coming. The county formed different subcommittees and didn't really take the recommendations of the most important C4 community group, but spent a lot of time kicking the ball down the line. In the meantime, cultivators who had geared up, been prepared, and had been, this was the industry. This is the terroir. Terroir is not just land and climate and environment. Terroir is people too. But like the there is the spirit and the culture of the people that goes into the plants as well. And I feel like a lot of that's being lost. The average consumer who's maybe never bought a bag from Mahoney or who goes into what appears to be like a Target or a Walmart and is able to buy stuff from the counter. Everything's fine and dandy. It's great. Not a legal channel wish to sell. What were the consequences to achieve that? Were those consequences justified? Because a lot of policy doesn't make sense. Why is it that variances for different code will be issued for vineyards, but then for cannabis farmers it becomes inaccessible? And I think I've heard different talks about different initiatives about measures moving forward that want to overturn Prop 64 and change it. My biggest fear is that it's not necessarily what is in Prop 64 specifically that is the roadblock. And really to understand this, I wish that there was more cultivators here from different counties all over the state, because one of the things that I've noticed is that there are different tools of power that come down to arbitrary decisions by unelected officials. And that's a great way of managing policy outside the realm of the control of the people. And the reason that I summarize that.
Let me just jump in here. I want to ask you, you used the phrase sheriffs running around. I know that's not hyperbole. What do you mean? You know, tell us about, you know, what that looks like.
What that looks like is blinding. It's hard to say what it looks like, but I can tell you is what it affects harm.
Do you live in fear of?
I live in fear. I live in fear. I think I have post-traumatic stress disorder. After they've been through the neighborhoods, I haven't been able to sleep. I give thanks that like, my daughter and my wife weren't home to like witness that. And I think the scariest part about it all was not the loss of work, was not the loss of privacy, it was the impunity in which the behavior of these sheriffs really is. And they're just doing their job. I'm not looking to point blame at any single person, but like a system that empowers people to like come to your house and give them search warrants based on what? Mere possession of a greenhouse? I've seen some of these search warrant affidavits. You don't see plants. You see a greenhouse, and that's somehow grounds to come in, and they come with the search warrants.
What are they looking
They're
for?
bulletproof
What
vests.
are they looking for with this?
And they're all intimidating. And this is not, I don't want any sheriffs out there to feel like I'm personally attacking them. But when I'm in the privacy of my home and suddenly 10 people show up, and I live 10 miles down the end of the dirt road because I like to be alone, off-grid in nature. That's the life that I chose. And to have them show up weaponized and telling you how to be in your home, and then give them the right to just ransack your house and search whatever it is they want, and then chop all your hard work and kidnap your seeds, that's...
Is it a double danger being a person of color? Because the industry is dominated.
Like that, but I don't like to go there because then I lose a lot of people. And a lot of people will miss the point. So I believe that probably plays a factor. But I think there's also the fact that I'm not born and raised in Santa Cruz. I've been there for about 10 years now. But there's a lot of different factors. But I think that if we focus less on what the individual factors are, and focus more on the policy that directs and shifts the dynamics of that reality, because legislative law is great, but you know what? Application of that law is often open to interpretation.
Well, it's just easy to look to see who gets a piece of the rock and who doesn't, to know what's really going on. I'd love to bring you into this.
I mean, he's
Albert Cortrell, Terra Kenna, cultivators in Cloverville.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. Being my associate over here, being Boo, touched on a lot of important points, things that are going on. As far as the law enforcement aspect, the intimidation aspect. It's a 24/7, and I wouldn't call it PTSD because we're not out of it yet. We have to get out of this first to have PTSD. This ain't post traumatic stress disorder. This is current. We got to come up with a new word because this is where we're living still right now. I was in my garden about a month ago. They have a Facebook up in Cobolo. Cobolo's a small town up in the valley. It's actually Round Valley was originally. It's a reservation with there's 10 tribes of natives that used to occupy the greater Northern California region that were all marched in on what they called the mini Trail of Tears in the early 1900s and forced to stay in this valley at about a 2,800 foot elevation. And it was their valley, just to kind of digress a little bit and give a better picture of where we're at. It was their valley, it was the people's valley until that valley, there was nothing there at that time. There was no railroad in or out, so there was nothing there. So once the railroad got put in, now the trees were accessible for lumber, and then that era took place, and the valley was no longer Round Valley. It actually should be called Half Valley because they reduced the res to half of the valley and renamed the other half Cobolo, which is what we know as the Cobelo Valley. So, that's where we're at. The valley itself, where I'm at, there's a lot of trauma there, and it's still going on, and abuse of power, legislative put in place and then implemented at the discretion of the very few, even though passed by the discretion, maybe unknowingly of many. But where that brings us to currently, so I was in the garden and you just hear the whoop, 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 whoop. And every year, that's the sound of death from above. They should be playing that song, dun, 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 because that right there, it means the clock started. Are you going to be one of the people that fall? Are you going to be one of the pins? Because it's not a matter of if they're coming for someone, it's just a matter of who. And it's not a matter of when. We've got it down to, once you hear that, woof, 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 you got about 24 to 48 hours.
So this is really, they're sending you a message, essentially.
Some might look at it like that, but I think what they're really doing is they're identifying their line, because you can look at a map all you want and make a plan, but when you're traveling 100 miles into the mountains to deal with people that, if better left alone, have no problem fending for themselves, you're not going to be rushing in blind up a hill at 80 miles an hour where, if you're not from around there, you're not safe going over 5 miles an hour. So, yeah, so pretty much, I think it's more for their benefit than ours, to be honest.
So, Albert, if I may, I wanted to ask you, Albert, and the both of you, Bamboo too, is there a sense with you that you've been targeted? It seems like, you're small farmers, you're small growers, but in the last year, or up to 2 years ago, before the passage of recreational adult use, there wasn't as much tension. Now, it's almost as if small cultivators are being systemized, singled out by the governor who's authorized this. Look at it. You're talking about Black Hawk helicopters.
Oh, yeah.
Those are military.
Yeah,
That's military.
and I'll say this, prior to this year, it wasn't Black Hawk helicopters that was doing this kind of stuff. This year, the National Guard got engaged. When I mean engaged, after they flew the valley, Facebook, it takes time. The valley, we're not used to, I guess we are getting used to it. I guess I'm the one that's kind of not used to it, but they've got like a Facebook page, where information's posted, and that I just was made aware of. Apparently it's been there for a couple years, but, you're so busy doing what you need to do. But on the Facebook, it says someone because there's only one way in and out of Cobolo as well, unless you take over the ridge to the National Forest, and that's all dirt roads, fire trails, left, right, and you just don't go there if you're not from there. No cell phone service, the good old luxuries. So, but somebody had posted on the Facebook page that about 3, and they do it strategically, they came in the valley at about 3:30 in the morning with about, it was a Humvee train, or SUV train it was about 70 vehicles that came in the middle of the night. And they set up in the back of the valley, down by the water, and I seen them the next day when I drove out to Black Butte, and they had these big old cat generators the size of Connex boxes. It was a military compound. You can point blank, and there was no mistake. It wasn't code enforcement. It wasn't, just general and regulation type of bodies. This was a military compound. And maybe not, they did not engage in warfare, but they were ready.
And see, that comes down to like county by county, that comes down to county by county action. Santa Cruz County didn't have that level of degree. What we're having now is that we're having flights, like there was like 2 flights in the last 24 hours. I think there was more flights earlier this week, and then within days of each of those flights, we're seeing anywhere from like 5 to 10 different farms hit. If you go off of their press releases, they're cutting back. I mean, to be honest, like for 10 farms to be hit, they're finding really like not much. I don't know, 100 pounds off of 10 different farms, seed collections, some licensed firearms, but if you look at how like they try to like post the pictures and what they try to take the monkey home, but this is the clincher. Look at how many fines were issued. That's like one of the press release lines. $75,000 in fines cited, and that's not even probably including the red tags that were issued. And really what I find disingenuous about all this is kind of like, I know what's out there. I know what I see. I live in this neighborhood. So I don't need the sheriffs to tell me what goes on. I know what goes on in my backyard. And when they post these pictures, they push all of them together. They put the guns there like we're a bunch of violent criminals. No, we live 2 miles down,
Right.
3, 4, 5 miles down dirt roads where like there is no police response time. Maybe a couple hours, but like for me to get to town, it's about an hour. So firearms aren't because we're a bunch of like criminals out there. It's a tool to have in the arsenal of tools when you live off grid. That's what it is. And so they're flying around in these planes and they're coming out 10 deep with the paddy wagon and with their bulletproof vest. And you don't need to like show all the weaponry to make it militarized. What's militarized is the use of force, whether it's violent force, political force, economic force. It's the violent use of whatever that blank force is against the people. I feel assaulted on so many levels. Forget like just having a bunch of what feels like, I have a problem characterizing it. Their behavior was thug-like. And to be subjected to that, for growing some plants that I use medicinally, and I have history, and a documented history of doing that, it seems preposterous, and it's not, the war on drugs isn't over. And like, hey, it's not a drug, it's a war on lifestyles that are alternative to the development that they seek. And why is the county short on tax dollars? There was 1,000 registrations prior to legalization. How many farms in the county? Less than 100 have been duly licensed and processed. And that's not just fault of their own. You know, the county hasn't even taken payments to process applications in the last 2 or 3 years. So with these, it's a conundrum. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And you've done so by design. And that's my problem.
And I've seen these historically happen before. I used to get a lot of reports related to people's incidents with law enforcement. And the most shocking one for me was here in Moreland area of Santa Rosa, where they got 34 warrants and went door to door. Ultimately, they got 300 plants, which was like 10 plants at home. So what we saw was 11 different agencies going into these raids. And I think most voters in California think that now that we have legalization, that we're not going to see the same resources being wasted on this type of enforcement. But ultimately, I think what law enforcement is trying to do is show that there's a distinction between those that have permits and those that don't. I saw Lori Ajax speak at Meadowlands a few weeks ago, and one of the things she expressed is that she wanted more resources to go after those that don't have permits. And the first thing that I thought about was how do we lower those barriers of entry so that people are more qualified or can affordably access those permits. You know, things like tax reductions, having loans available. We don't have banking systems that can help our small farmers right now. So I just wanted to brainstorm with both of you or what you thought some of those solutions were to reduce the barrier of entry for cultivators.
Can I fill this one?
Yeah.
Better. All right. So The legalization, the commercialization, the recreationalization of cannabis was a complete bait and switch. It was come out into the light, it's all good, you don't need it, here's the cheese, and then the trap. And then when you see your neighbor and somebody you've been cultivating with, when you see how tricky the web is of legalization in the path, that's not going to motivate you to go and jump into the same web. It's the whole legalization process. It's too many hurdles, too many agencies, and none of the agencies really are communicating with each other. It's kind of just like a pecking order of things, and you can't pass go until the pecking order is complete. And unfortunately, in the cultivation realm, it's the trickiest and most sticky web of all. You've got environmental impacts, you've got the Fish and Wildlife game, you've got the Water Resource Board, you've got archaeology reports you need to get, you've got biology reports you need to get. If you've got to move a rock that's bigger than a golf ball, you need to hire, licensed foresters to determine that you're not affecting the ecology in the area. If you need to move a tree that is ultimately dead and causing, and really fire hazard, and we have a lot of issues here in California when it comes to fire and dead trees and removal of that, and Gavin knows well about that. They make it impossible for you to do anything. If that parcel of land has any record of pot history on it, they make it where you're not doing a favor or doing something that you should be doing by maintaining your property and clearing brush and getting dead limbs out. You now need to get permits for every single tree and every single thing that you move. It's insanity.
So would reducing permit costs or having amnesty for cultivators be some of those solutions? I'm just trying to framework what those solutions look like.
I was just going to piggyback on what you were saying is that everybody, the counter argument to what he's saying is that everybody needs to get permits. Why shouldn't they? Great. Level the playing field. Why are vineyards and other industries granted variances that we are not? Why is there, at least in Santa Cruz County, in order to get your F1 permit, which is what the county fire marshal is requiring for anything that's commercial. So basically, if you're like in my neck of the woods where people have lived for a long time, it's not like anybody's trying to throw in a big mega structure. We're saying, can we just dry our weed in our barns? No, because now we need to have 20-foot wide all-weather access roads to the property along with 160,000 gallons of water storage for fire safety hazards. Okay, great. I understand the concern. I am not mocking the concern. But why is it that I've been to plenty of vineyards in the county that are down roads that are just like this, that have their F1s issued, that there seems to be a double standard in the application across multiple layers of state law. And as Snoop once said, everybody got their cup, but they ain't chipped in. And that's really what it feels like. Everybody's counting your chickens before they're hatched and assuming that we're all Mr. Moneybags because at some point in history they thought that the price was really high. But I think what people don't understand is that even within the black market that existed, or the gray market that existed prior to Prop 64, there are costs and taxes and other things, and we are just like any other type of business. Why can't you just apply the rules in the same way? I don't want us to be given a free pass. I don't want anybody to have to say, well, that's not fair. But I can say that this is not fair when I'm seeing them immediately plug in almost any industry. They can get away with that. And I hate the politics of them, us, we, them. But like that divide is what I'm seeing in the application of our law. And so and that's an age-old question, how do we protect against that? And I think I can grow tomatoes, and nobody's going to tell me how many tomatoes I can grow, right? Am I giving the guy at the farmer's market a run for his money for his tomatoes? Okay, maybe I'm not buying some tomatoes from him. But I'm not setting up shop and just doing it. And if they just normalize, I'd like to see the normalization of weed before we get to legalization. Right. Because legalization is really feels like control and consolidate. Because unless you have the finances and the political jurisdiction in terms of influence to wave your hand and write a check and make things happen, then you're out. And the biggest loss right here is to the American people. Why? Because in a capitalist society, we're supposed to get the best outcomes, and we're supposed to get the best. Do you really think that, like, growing a bunch of weed in commercial greenhouses in the lowlands, the coast, where we have like a lot of fog and traditional ornamental flowers, there's permeated pesticides that are just inherently in the environment? Is that really a better option than leaving families that have been growing in these hills for generations to do it? There's something in that ecosystem that gets lost. And I think that, at least in Santa Cruz County, I've seen a couple businesses go out of business. I think that if you start talking to a lot of business owners, and this is the worst part about all of this, is that because it's been criminalized, and for so long there was this war where we were the bad criminals. It's like you throw the word pot or cannabis grower or cultivator into the mix, and you lose a large part of the population. And because we, as cultivators and members of this industry, have been ostracized and made to feel that, we live in fear, and we are scared to speak up. I have talked to a lot of people to come today, and nobody wants to come. Nobody wants to show up. Nobody wants to file a class action lawsuit. And initially, they did, but a lot of the people that I talked to are living in fear, and they've told me that at first they were really gung-ho, but now they're like, well, you know, if we challenge the order and we still want to play in this paradigm, then they're going to make our lives more miserable. And I'm like,
we're gonna, that's amazing. And hearing what you have to say really throws a whole different spotlight on what this struggle looks like from a different angle. Incredibly important information. We're going to have to get out of here for now, but I just want to ask you, where is there a group? How are you fighting to get this word out to a larger audience? Because this is important. What's that struggle? What are you doing? Very briefly.
I don't have a one group that I can point anybody to, because I think what's happening is that different people across the state are living different experiences. The overarching umbrella organization for people to check out is CCHI 2020. It's the official January bill, California Cannabis Health Initiative, seeks to regulate it closer to a quality model. I think that they're making really good efforts, and I think that there are local chapters for that. I think that what I really want to encourage everybody to do is start talking to your neighbors, talking to people immediately around you, and start organizing. And do it block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street. And as you guys join together and make a voice, you will hear the others and connect with those people and help bring a voice. And the best thing that you can do is that when you're in the supermarket and you're looking at somebody that you know has no idea, strike up a conversation with them.
That sounds like a very good idea for a lot of different reasons. I'm going to leave it right there. I want to give you a final shot at your thoughts on this.
All right, so there are groups out there, and there's, you know, I'm privileged to, they have a lot of social equity programs going on around. You have the DCR that's in Los Angeles. You have a really good equity program. I wouldn't say really good, but it was a really good platform or start point. Oakland got to give it a really good go, and it's still going on. You know, when you're trying to equalize decades of oppression in a matter of moments, and you try to really put it into a box to say, okay, these kind of people qualify, and you come up with all these. You're just doing it again. You're taking them from one box and you're putting them in another box, and then everybody looks at them and, oh, they're the social equity people. Like there are things out there, but it's a double-edged sword. Once you put yourself into that box, it's almost, yes, there's some privileges that come with it, but there's also handicaps that put you right back into the shackles that they say that they're liberating you from. So it's a give and go. I work with the state equity level group, Canada Equity. I work with with Nancy Marcus and Greg Miner in Oakland. They're in charge of the cannabis program, and they're really doing an outstanding effort with the equity people themselves. The state literally just released, this is on the government side, they just recently approved, I think it was today actually, $10 million in funds that you can apply up to $100,000. It's grants, $10 million grant money. In retrospect, that equates to 1,000 people that can both benefit from this. In a state of how many? 30, how many people got in this state? And how many of those you think have been disenfranchised in some way or form? Maybe not even necessarily cannabis, because cannabis is a business. And that's the other thing that I really don't, the cannabis, they're like, oh, we're only gonna help out the people of color that have dealt with cannabis. When there's people that have been disenfranchised on every level, and now that there's an opportunity for legalization or for money to be made, why isn't it available to all people? Maybe people that were disenfranchised that saw the writing on the wall and knew, I don't want to deal with that because I know I'm of color, and that tandem with the fact of dealing with cannabis before rec, I'm putting a double target on my chest. And now that that one target's off, I still am a person of color, but now I'm not actually getting qualified for these programs unless I fit into their little hoop that they need me to jump through again. If that makes sense anyway.
Thank you both for coming out today. I think it's really important for everyone to understand what the transition looks like for this movement since regulations has passed. I am going to remind you guys about the event that's going to be taking place on August 10th. That's going to be on Saturday up in Santa Rosa. That will be starting at 10 a.m. and going until 2:30. We have guest speakers including Dr. Bonnie Goldstein, Dr. Bao Lee, who's going to be speaking related to autism, Martin Lee, as well as Vicki Lynn. This is a symposium related to cannabis use for neurological disorders, and we hope that you are interested in learning more and finding out about how this may be helpful to people's pediatric conditions related to medical cannabis. For more information, you can check out the website, safeaccessnow.org. I also want to thank the sponsors that are helping make this event possible, because that's what's allowing us to put this on. We've got Mercy Wellness Center, we have Fiddler's Greens, we have Justice Grown, as well as Sonoma Patient Group that have all signed on to support this event. So thank you so much for having us, and I appreciate you coming all the way up to Santa Rosa to talk to us about cannabis.
Well, this is going to be wrapping it up, Dennis, and it looks like, according to Bamboo and Albert, the drug war has been focused on the small cultivator, whereas big ag, what I call industrial artificial marijuana, is being allowed to flourish. Well, the pushback is coming from you all and the rest of us that want natural, organic, and medicinal quality cannabis, where everyone has an opportunity to grow, not just the special interest groups or big ag. Dennis?
That does wrap it up for the first Flesh Under 420 podcast in collaboration with Chad Ray and EmeraldTV.com. This material will stream. We will continue the podcast. Thank you very much for all that you all do to bring light to the people. We're out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks much. You're an ace.
Given the board, I feel like I can help out.